later floats describe how the scandalous Treaty of Versailles and the turmoil of the Weimar Republic have been overcome once and for all thanks to National Socialism. By February 1938, frustrated by what he saw as the timidness of his own generals, Hitler effectively removed all top-level military opposition to his aggressive expansionist plans and assumed full control of the armed forces. By this time, Nazi delegations were naturally part of any parade. The Nazis were a genuinely popular government at this stage, but given the nature of the Nazi regime, its carefully choreographed outdoor events and the dangers inherent in public opposition to the regime, its real following is difficult to assess. There was certainly vocal and widespread support, but many still found anti-Semitism and theories of racial supremacy distasteful or absurd. Nonetheless, unwanted elements, ethnic, social or political, continued to be systematically eliminated from the Third Reich by being imprisoned or forced into manual labor in concentration camps. With the Anschluss, the annexation of Austria, came the Great Spring Cleansing. On the 18th of March, 1938, anti-Jewish pogroms and the enforcement of German anti-Semitic laws unmasked a racial frenzy in Vienna as the SS assumed control of all Jewish affairs in Austria. An American touring Europe documented these disturbing scenes. In May 1938, Hans Bauer, the Führer's chief pilot, flew Hitler and his entourage to Italy on a state visit. He documented his impressions in a small film he called Beautiful Italy. 6 months later, the film was shown to the German public. The host, King Vittorio Emanuele III, was an expert in demonstrating his superiority over Benito Mussolini, who, after all, held the power. Hitler detested the courtly ceremonials and let the king know it. On the 8th of May, the Italians organized an Air Force show for the German guests in Fobara, near Rome. But the Italians recently returned from their embarrassing but eventually triumphant foray into Abyssinia were slowly becoming the junior partners in the Rome-Berlin axis. Hitler and his escorts were little impressed by the Italian show of force. The demonstrations by the Italian fleet, however, as Hans Bauer later recalled, did gain the respect of their German allies. Although a lot of this amateur footage does not document the decisive stages of the Third Reich, it subtly reveals the extent of the grip Nazi ideology had over the German people. Goebbels had learnt much of his craft through a careful study of American advertising methods. He was a master of slogans. "The Jews are our misfortune," being one of his most famous. Bright color footage of children carrying swastikas made of flowers at the festival in Thuringian Badra is quite chilling in the light of this propaganda. Once a symbol of peace, the swastika now stood for one of the most invidious racial supremacist regimes of the 20th century. In the summer of 1938, Munich city councillor Christian Weber arranged for a particularly unusual event to be staged. During the horse racing week in Rheims, the Night of Amazons was held in the park of Nymphenburg Castle. Since visiting the World Exhibition in Paris, Weber, a fervent Nazi, wanted to prove that German girls were much prettier than French girls. So the German Diana, goddess of the hunt, and her servants was shown off in an unusually liberal manner by Nazi standards. The role of women in Germany at the time, of course, focused on the home and bearing children. Women could earn a special medal, the Honor Cross of the German Mother, for having children. A bronze one for having more than 4, a silver for more than 6, and a gold one for more than 8. That same summer, the annual Gypsy Festival took place in the small town of Wieskau in Sachsen-Anhalt. The Nazi ethnologists came with their cameras to shoot color film of these activities. The entire village was present, most dressed up as thieves or gypsies. Gypsies did not fit into Hitler's master plan, however. They had been declared inveterate criminals. Forced labor and mass sterilization of the gypsies, because they are endangering the blood purity of the German peasantry, was widely recommended. A special section had been created for them in Buchenwald concentration camp. Approximately 250,000, but maybe as many as 500,000 gypsies, ultimately died in the Holocaust. This festival included an odd custom of hanging an effigy of a thief at its close. This footage was found in the Federal Film Archive of Berlin, commissioned by the National Socialist Party. The cameramen, Erich Wiesleder and Paul Welz, visited the Nazi Congress in Nuremberg in September 1938 to document life in the delegates' camp. For this special occasion, they were allowed to shoot in 16mm color film. The parade of the individual units lasted 3 hours. Such German military might was explicitly forbidden by the Versailles Treaty, but no one was prepared to fight another war to enforce its terms at this stage. The Third Reich now began to show off its growing strength, not only in Germany, but also beyond its borders. During the 1937 World Exhibition in Paris, the Germans occupied a site adjacent to the Eiffel Tower. Directly opposite was the Soviet Union's exhibition hall. Hitler gave his new favorite, Albert Speer, whom he had recently appointed General Architectural Inspector of the Reich, the task of building the German pavilion. In Berlin and at Obersalzberg, they deliberated over drawings and drafts through the night. The Führer, who would have liked to have been an architect, saw in Albert Speer the perfect designer of his grand plans. Speer, already a member of the close circle around the dictator,